What it do? It's your boy Big Will Island Creative, and I guess third time's a charm. Now, this is the third time I've tried to record this video. The first times I tried to do it outside, but rushing to do so, I didn't pay attention to the audio, so it sounded like crap. So, therefore, we have crappy audio. So I'm gonna go ahead and re-record this video, and I think it comes from, honestly, me not planning this video the way it should have been planned. But nonetheless, your first love is the topic, so let's talk about it. Now, I know some of y'all are going to be like, Big Will, what are you talking about? But my real gearheads, my experienced people are going to know exactly what I'm talking about. You know, it doesn't matter if it's your first camera, you have a million cameras. We all have that one camera that we fall in love with. The one camera that makes us happier than any other camera, brings us joy that none of the other cameras bring us. It's just something about it. For me, it's the fx30, and I'll get to reasons why in a minute. But I wanted to make this video because, you know, for somebody who wants to get into content creation or being a videographer or even a photographer, you know, when they look up what camera should I buy, or, you know, what do I need to get started into this, you know, a lot of people make videos explaining, okay, you need this, this, and this, but no one ever talks about, you know, being on the lookout, because it doesn't matter how many cameras you have or gone through. When you find that one, that first love one, you know, it's a different type of feeling. There's nothing like it. You know, you might get rid of that camera and get it back 5 times, because every time you get rid of it, you realize no other camera can do what this one does or make you feel like this one makes you feel. And for me, that's the fx30. I'll give you prime examples. Now, when the fx30 came out, I knew I wanted it. You know, it was everything I needed in a camera at the time, and everything I wanted in a camera at the time. You know, a cheaper FX3, which was the camera at the time that I was in love with. And I got the FX30, and once I got it, oh, I felt complete. Just creating with it and making videos and content with it just made me so happy. But this camera is slept on in low light because it performs a lot better in low light than people give it credit for. But as somebody who wanted to be as professional as I could be in my company and bring people the best quality video I can bring them, you know, I sold myself a lie. I sold myself on the fact that I needed full frame. I needed to move on because I needed better low light. I needed more depth of field. I just needed all that. So I got rid of my FX30 and I got an A7 IV, and that camera is a beast. You know, it's a great camera, but I noticed I wasn't as happy as I was with the FX30. So I ended up with an A7S III, and let me tell you what, that camera is a low light beast. However, that camera is very overrated. That's another video. And while having these full frame cameras made my job easier, because yes, in a sense they are, you know, better than the FX30, I was never as happy as I was when I had my FX30. So I ended up getting rid of those, and I got my FX30 back, and since then I've been so happy making videos and content. Like, one, this camera, I had a conversation with a buddy of mine. This camera is so overrated but underrated at the same time. It's a lot better in low light than people give it credit for, and it's just something that, you know, it's an amazing camera. And you know, it's hard not to get an amazing camera these days. Like, when it comes to having a tool for the job, there is a tool for everyone these days. If you can't find what you need, you're probably in the wrong business. Now, there are a few things that make people fall in love with, you know, their gear. You know, it could be the way the image looks in this specific camera that's made you fall in love with it. It could be something as simple as a button placement, and because other cameras don't have that button placement, you can never get as happy as you are with this camera. For me and the FX30, I think it was just the lightweightness of the package, the look of the package. The package had everything I needed as a filmmaker, and it was the first time that I kind of just had every single thing I wanted. And I feel like the only other camera that could probably make me as happy as the FX30 if I really want to get back into full frame is the FX3. And I thought about it, like when I got the A7S III, should I have just gotten the FX3 because it's essentially the A7S III and the FX30 combined. And at the time when the FX30 came out, the FX3 didn't have certain things that this camera had. And I think that's what made me kind of back up from it and just stick with the FX30 until I decided to do the full frame thing. Now, this is a topic that's probably going to get a lot of flack for. There's going to be a lot of people that wants to come from my head, but I don't understand what is up with the A7S III. I don't know if Sony is leaving it behind or if other cameras have just caught up so much to it that it just feels that way. When I had the A7S III, I had already had the FX3, the A7 IV, and some other cameras that aren't Sony. And let me tell you what, out of all those cameras, Sony's video beast and king, the A7S III, felt so outdated in the sense of the menus, buttons, what you could and couldn't do with that camera. Like right now, if I had the money to buy a brand new A7S III or to go another route, maybe an FX3, or I don't think I would pick the A7S III. Like a couple years ago, yes, there was nothing touching it, but now like there's nothing that you can't find elsewhere that justifies dealing with the A7S III, and it sucks. And I feel bad for the people who use the A7S III and are in love with it because it's something as simple as Sony giving an update that could change a lot for that camera. You know, I don't get it. Like if that's Sony's, obviously it's not Sony's flagship camera, but if Sony's Video Beast is the camera that changed a lot for Sony, did so well, made a lot of content creators, and it just did so much for this thing that we love that it's like, it kind of is sad watching Sony kind of just leave those people behind. And I'm starting to see now, like on the used market, people are starting to go away from it. They're getting the A7R5 because, you know, it can do almost everything the A7S III can do, or they're going FX3 route, or, you know, just getting away from it completely. And then I noticed when I got rid of my A7S III, like it was harder than I expected to get rid of it. Or it's harder to get rid of it at the price like you're trying to get for it. Like people didn't want it or they just wanted to trade. And, you know, it didn't hold that value that, you know, when you hear A7S III, like it didn't hold the value you expect it to hold. So I don't really know what's up with that. Like, is Sony leaving it behind? Are we about to get an A7S IV at some point? Or is Sony trying to push those people towards the FX3 type? I don't really know. But what I do know is, like, I don't know why that camera just felt so outdated. Now, getting back to my point, I'm not saying that the FX30 is better than any camera. I do feel like it's the GOAT for value. Like, I do feel like for value, besides maybe the Lumix S5 II, what you get with this camera for how much it cost, like value-wise, I don't think anything but maybe the S5 II is touching it. Like, I'm not saying it's the best camera in the world, but what I am saying is what you get for what it offers and how much it costs, like, it is. This camera has turned me towards more of, filmmaking aspect other than just videographer and content creation. Like I want to get into actual filmmaking, not just doing commercials and other things for people. And with that being said, I know for the people that's about to jump through my screen, like it's just a blah, 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 blah. Look, I know there's a lot of features this camera is missing that makes it a true cinema camera. And I'm surprised the FX3 didn't have built-in NDs. But, FX32 or FX3 too, built-in MDs, a built-in time code thing without having to buy anything extra, the ability to do shutter angle, and just more cinema-esque stuff would make this so much awesomer. That's probably not even a word. And I will say this because I've heard people say like the FX3 is supposed to be cinema, blah, blah, blah. It didn't have this. But you got to think, before the FX30, the FX3 was Sony's entry into the cinema line. So therefore, they're not going to put everything like the FX6 or the FX9 had into it because it was the entry model. Now that the FX30 is out, the FX3 version 2 may get more of that, but it still technically is an entry model because the FX30 didn't take that entry place in a sense. It did, but it didn't because it's the entry into full frame, where the FX30 is still entry, period. So, we'll have to see how that goes, but I've heard people say, why didn't the FX3 have this, this, and this? But I think now that the FX30 is out, it's kind of diluted people into realizing that before the FX30, the FX3 was the entry. And camera companies don't usually put every single thing you would want into an entry model because if that was the case, you would never upgrade. Like if they gave you everything that you wanted in the FX3, would you bother buying the FX6? Like I get it, it sucks, but as a business, you got to think like a business.